Hello and welcome to another video. Today, because it is the end of the month, we are doing a little recap. These are only some of the books that I read this month. I read a lot of books this month. I read a grand total of 14 books, which is insane. But it was also the plan, so I'm happy I read 14 books. I would have been disappointed if I'd read less. As you'll know, if you watch my other videos, in February I choose a TBR of 14 books. It's something I've done for the past 10 years now. It's a challenge that I do every single February to try and get through all those 14 books during the month. And this month, we completed it. A little round of applause for myself. So I'm very happy with that. I think it's also I think it's the second month on this channel that we've completed the TBR we set ourselves. And of course we were going to do it on the month where we had the most books. So obviously we have a lot of books to get through in this video. A lot of books. Not all of the books we read in physical. I read a lot of them on my Kindle as well. Honestly, February is probably the month where I read the most on my Kindle. So I'm gonna go through all the books in order, chronological order when I read them. So starting with the first book I read and ending with the last book I read, obviously. But anywho, enough yap. We have a lot of books to get through, so we might as well get into it. Grab yourself a nice warm or cold drink and let's get right into the video. So the first book that I started off the month with was A Fate Inked in Blood by Daniel L. Jensen. So I read A Fate Inked in Blood and then the second book in the Cursed something Fate? Saga of the Unfaded, that's what this is called. So yes, I read this one, Fate Inked in Blood, and then the second one, Curse Carved in Bone. So they were both 3.75 stars for me. I really enjoyed it. I know that a lot of people said that the second book was not as good as the first. I personally didn't think that the case. I honestly preferred the second book, not by much, but I really enjoyed it. I think one of the main things I liked was our main characters, so Freya and Bjorn. I thought they were actually, they were my babies. I loved them. I really liked their couple. I liked how Bjorn was constantly fighting for Freya to do her own thing, to be able to have her freedom. Like I said in my last wrap-up video with Seven Wings and Nights, I just love me a male main character who's endlessly supportive of the female main character and just won't hold them back. So I really like that. This one did take me a little bit to get into at the beginning. I think I was probably about 40% of the way in before I really got into the story. But I do think that was also partially to do with the fact that when I went into this, I knew that people hadn't liked the second one. So I was kind of in my head a bit about it, and I would have enjoyed it much more if I hadn't seen anyone's opinion. I just got into it blind. I love the Viking setting of this. I feel like I don't read enough Viking fantasy, and it's something that I find really interesting. I love Viking lore. I think it's something I would like to read more of, so I would love to find some more Viking inspired fantasy books. As for the second one, honestly, I do feel that this whole duology could have been stretched out into a trilogy and it would have made it better, because the second one I felt like an awful lot happened. The first one was fine, the pacing was great, it made sense with it being a first book and everything. I just felt like the second one, you had a few too many things happen and it felt not rushed necessarily, but there was a lot going on in just one book, and maybe that's why people didn't like it. And I personally feel that it would have been a lot better if you just stretched out just a little bit more and made 3 books, and I just think that would have made a lot more sense for the story. But yeah, I also really like the epilogue in book 2, because at the end, you think they had the typical they settled down and started a family, but actually they settled down and then they were like, this is boring, let's go back to fighting the bad guys. And I really enjoyed that. I thought it was quite different and it was a fun take on your typical happy ending epilogue. But yeah, so these are both 3.75 stars. It was a really decent series. It was a good way to start off the month as well, because they were really quite fast-paced and quick and easy to read. So yeah, I really enjoyed this duology. Next off, we read a standalone. We read Girl, Serpent, Thorn by Melissa Basher Doust. I've been wanting to read this for so long, and so when I started, I was kind of worried, especially because the beginning wasn't necessarily slow, but it's like all books, it takes you a bit to get into. So I was so worried I was not going to like it, and I was wrong. I ended up loving it. I gave it 4 stars. I honestly thought this was really good. And also, the mythology in this was Persian inspired, so it's a Persian inspired fantasy, and I thought that was really interesting because I've literally never read anything Persian inspired before. So it was I was learning new myths, I was learning new lore, that kind of stuff, and so that was really interesting because it was different from most of the books I read, because I was learning something new. So I really liked this. I honestly loved how our main character was not necessarily morally grey, although she was kind of morally grey, but she was also so she was a princess and she was cursed at birth to be poisonous to everything she touched. So if she touched something, they died, basically. And it was just really interesting. I feel how they managed to both play she's a poisonous monster type of thing, because that's how kind of a lot of people saw her, and then the fact that she was also the princess and that she did want to do good things. I just thought our main character was really interesting, and the 2 sides of her, the good versus the bad, I just found it really interesting. I also really liked it because she'd been poisoned at birth, her family kind of kept her sequestered, hidden away, and so she was justifiably angry about that, and I absolutely love it. And it was the same in A Fate Inked in Blood. I love it when female main characters are allowed to be angry, because you don't see it all the time, but I just love it. I love it when female characters are allowed to be angry, and Soraya, our main character in this, she was angry at times, and it was justified, because like of course she was going to be angry. She had a curse upon her when she was a child that she didn't choose, and because of it she spent her whole life hidden away. I would be angry. And so I really enjoyed this book. I thought it was really good, and it's quite short, and it's a standalone, and I thought it was absolutely, because I don't read a lot of fantasy standalones, and so I thought the pacing was like perfect. It managed to give me the whole story without me feeling like we were lacking, or like there was too much tried to fit into too small a book. So honestly, this book, it was really, really good. It's a disgrace, I feel, that I haven't seen this on BookTok or BookTube. Like, people don't talk about this book enough, but it is so good. Then we read Fable, and then Namesake, which is the second book. So I have the second book in physical, but the first book not in physical. Honestly, again, this was like Girl Serpent Thorn. I had been waiting for so long to read it, and unfortunately this one did kind of disappoint. The first book, I didn't love it. I felt like nothing really happened. I felt like it was very character driven, and the characters were interesting. I said in my reading vlog that it was kind of giving Six of Crows, because it was very found family, and then they weren't pirates, they were traders, but they were still doing some kind of illegal stuff here and there. So it did kind of feel Six of Crows in that aspect, and especially because, like, you know, within the Six of Crows, you have all the Six of Crows all like coupled up. This was the same. You had everyone who got coupled up during the books, and I did really like our main characters, Fable and West. I thought the writing style was really nice. Absolutely loved the way it was written. However, the first book especially, and then the first half of this second book, was very slow. I felt like nothing was happening, or like things were happening, but it was more like you were just watching a day in their life, and it wasn't that interesting. But then the second half of this book, I felt like we got more typical book action, so I enjoyed this one a lot more. The first book, I gave it 3 stars, and then this one was 3.75 stars. So honestly, I was kind of disappointed by the series because it wasn't what I expected. I hoped it would be better, but the second book, so the second half of this book, kind of made up and made it an overall good series. Like, it's still a series that I would recommend, because I do think the characters do manage to just about hold your interest, but it's really like just, you know. But yeah, so when I was reading the first one, I was really disappointed. I expected so much better, and it wasn't actually pirates, but to be fair, that's on me. I thought it was pirates, but it wasn't. It doesn't even say pirates in the blurb, it says traders very clearly, so that's on me. But I also loved the relationship that Fable had with her father, because they could have very easily had it be the father is the bad guy, because basically at the beginning of the first one, her father had left her when she was 14 on this island where basically everyone who lives there, they're kind of like iffy, kind of like Australia back in the day. He'd left there when she was 14 because her mama just died, and it was a whole thing. They could have very easily taken the path of like, her dad is a bad guy, he is the enemy in the book, that kind of thing, but instead they didn't, and I really liked that. I thought her relationship with her father was like the right amount of complicated that it made sense. Like, it felt very real, and then at the end, like, you had a resolution, and I loved it. I really like the end, how it ends, because I don't know, I'm a sucker for a happy ending, and this did have a happy ending, and it had not only a happy ending like for the character, but also had a reconciliation with her father. And you realise that actually the father isn't that bad. It's kind of just like they live in a tricky world and he did the best of what he could, kind of stuff. So I really liked that aspect, and I thought it was quite interesting. It was a relationship that I don't see a lot in fantasy books, because like I said, most of the time if the dad abandons someone when they're 14, they become the bad guy, or at least they have a complete 360 and they immediately become the good guy, kind of thing. But her dad was, what's the word? Complicated? That's too easy a word. Well, he was complicated. It wasn't just black and white. He was in the grey areas, and I really liked it. I thought this book dealt with that at least very well. But the second one, yeah, the second one was a lot better than the first one. We then read the Mirror Visitor books. So that is book 1, A Winter's Promise, book 2, A Missing of Claire de Lune, book 3, The Memory of Babel, and book 4, The Storm of Echoes. So all of these books were 3.5 stars for me, outside of the second book, which was 3.75 stars. I feel like this month most of the books I read would kind of average out about 3.5 stars. So as I said before, this book was originally written by a French author, and I do think you can tell, not necessarily tell, but I feel like the plot points, and like, so in fantasy a lot of typical plot points are quite similar throughout a lot of books, just because they're the staples of the genre. But in this, because it's French, I felt like a lot of things were quite different, and so that was really interesting, because I really didn't know where the story was going at times, and it was very different from anything else I'd read. So honestly, I really liked this series. I thought it was really interesting, and it was very different from anything I'd ever read, so it was fun to read something where I had absolutely no idea of where it was gonna go. I will say though, and I said this a lot in my how many pages I can read in a week vlog, I really did not like our main male character, and luckily there wasn't, like, romance was really a very side plot for these stories, but our main character Thorn, I did not like him at all. So I'm glad that romance was a side plot, because otherwise I could not have got behind it. Basically, in the first 3 books, I hated him. When I was reading the 3rd book, I believe it was, there were literally so many times I literally just had to close the book, just breathe, because that man annoyed me so much. Like, I really did not like him. And then in the 4th book, he didn't come good necessarily. Like, he didn't have like a huge character change, because that would have been unrealistic that for 3 books he was one way and then he completely changes in the 4th. So at least in that aspect they stay consistent, but he kind of got a little bit better, because this is when they like finally get together, our main couple. It's definitely a very slow burn. It's like 3 books before anything happens. So I did like him a little bit better in this book, but still not enough to make up for how much I did not like him in the first 3. So that definitely made it a fun read. My complete and total dislike of the main male character. And I will say also the ending of this was really interesting. Like the rest of the book really, it was completely unlike anything I'd ever read before. And this whole last book honestly took the series in a direction that I did not expect. Yeah, it's been a while since I'd read a fantasy series, and so I did enjoy that, getting the right amount of information to keep you hooked, but not too much to make you think, oh, this could have been a trilogy or something. I did think that these books were very well done, and it was really interesting just because also the characters, they were very unique characters. And again, I do think maybe that's something to do with the French of it all, but I don't know. I just think if you're looking for a series, a book series that's completely different from anything you will have ever read, this is it. I really liked it. But yeah, the second book was my favorite, not for any particular reason. I just enjoyed the story more. One of the side characters who was my favorite character the whole thing, Archibald, he was a lot more important in this one than he was in the others, and so I really liked that. I kind of was worried because they were French that I wouldn't like them, that they would just be too different from the books I read, but it was different but in a good way. So I really enjoyed these and very happy I read this series, especially because each book kind of managed to be almost a different sub-genre. So this one was your typical first book in a series, so it's kind of like setting up the characters, setting up the world, setting up the intrigue. Not a lot is happening, but enough is happening to keep you interested and making you want to read more. And then this one kind of became like a mystery, because we had people who were going missing, so our main character had to find why they were going missing, who was taking them, that kind of stuff. So that became a mystery. And then this one was kind of like almost academic, because she went to the school of Babel, so the Good Family I believe the school was called, and so she was learning a bunch of stuff. So this one was almost like academia. And then this last one we went back to your typical last book in a series, so the conclusion, plot points getting revealed that actually changed the whole thing, that kind of thing. So this one was very much a typical last book in the story, but I like that because it kind of kept the series fresh. Instead of just being fantasy, it kind of was a different subgenre in each book. And then these next books we read in the 24-hour reading challenge. So we read all of these 5 books over a span of 24 hours. That is literally the only thing that made it possible for me to finish this reading challenge, was the fact that I did a 24-hour challenge. So we first read The Miseducation of Cameron Post, which I really liked. I really enjoyed this. This was a 4-star read for me. It wasn't what I expected going in, just because I'd only seen the trailer for the movie, and the movie basically is only really the second half of the book. The first half, it's her life when she's young, so from about 10 to maybe 16 years old, maybe 16 or 17, and it's her life, it's her discovering her sexuality and all that, growing up in small town Montana, just like regular coming of age stuff. And then the second half, she gets outed, and her aunt, because her parents died when she was young, so she lives with her aunt sends her to conversion therapy. So the second half is her in conversion therapy, and so basically the movie is only really her in conversion therapy. So I didn't realize that so much of the book took place before that, but I really like this. I thought the writing was really good. It was really visual. I was really picturing what was happening. It was very visual with like the Montana summers, and she does a lot of time swimming. It was a really visual book, so I understand why they made it into a movie, and I really liked this. It was really interesting. It felt really real, because basically you have her grandma. She's quite close with her grandma. She was with her grandma when she found out her parents died, and she also lives with her grandma, so her grandma and her aunt live together. And so you think that maybe the aunt, who's very religious, is going to try and send her to conversion therapy, and maybe the grandma will be against it, but the grandma is equally as like homophobic as the aunt. You just don't expect it. So she's like, you're going to conversion therapy, I don't want a gay granddaughter, all that stuff. And I found that really interesting, because it's not what you expect. Like, the characters weren't they didn't go in the way you expect. Also, the person who outs her was also gay herself. She got scared, and so she was like, oh, she tempted me to sin and everything. But actually she was equally as gay, and she was consenting in the whole gayness and everything, and she had it. So you expect there to be some kind of reconciliation at the end, for her to re-find this person, the person to be like, I'm sorry I did that, I was pressured, da 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 da. But there isn't. The other person stays steadfast in her religious I'm not gay, gay is bad, and it was just not what you expect, and I really like that. Like, I also was like frustrated because I was like, god damn it, I want there to be a resolution between these characters, but I also recognised that in real life that's just not necessarily how it works, and so I thought this was really well done. I really like this book. I really like the writing of it. I thought it was really interesting, and I thought it also dealt with the topic in a fairly good way that you could read it as a younger reader. Like, it wasn't too heavy or anything, even the conversion therapy, and it was really interesting. I just thought it was like a really interesting, realistic view of it. Like, you didn't have good guys, you didn't have bad guys, no one was like clear-cut good or bad, and I just thought that was really interesting. We then read a trilogy, so the Daughter of the Pirate King trilogy. So we read book 1, Daughter of the Pirate King, book 2, Daughter of the Siren Queen, and book 3, Vengeance of the Pirate Queen. So actually it's more like book 1 and book 2 a duology, and then book 3 is a spin-off, but I didn't know that going in. I generally thought it was a trilogy, so I was in for a surprise. Book 1 and book 2 was 3 stars for me, and book 3 was 3.5 stars. It was honestly the perfect thing for a 24-hour reading challenge. It was just fun and entertaining. There wasn't anything deep to it. I enjoyed it. It was very piratey, especially the last one. The last one was really giving me Pirates of the Caribbean, so that was a lot of fun. I just love pirate media, and I feel like, well, you don't get a lot of female pirate media, and this one was definitely very female pirate media, especially book 2 and book 3 more so than book 1, and I really like that. And I think that's a Trisha Levenseller thing. She writes a lot of books with strong female characters from what I've seen, and this was definitely the case. So this was her debut novel and her debut series, I believe. To the writing style, you could tell that it was her first book, but it did get better as the books progressed, as it often is the case, and the female main characters were really cool. I really liked our main character Lossa in this one, and then our main character in the third one, Serinda. Personally, I didn't dislike the male main character. Just, I felt like in this one it was like insta love, in that she was supposed to be his prisoner and from an enemy pirate ship, but he like sees her and immediately falls in love pretty much. Like, we were, well, they'd met twice and he was saying, "I love your hair," and I was like, no, too quick. Slow it down. But I did enjoy the story. I feel like in this one, this was very much a setup book. I feel like maybe it didn't need to be its own book because things happened, but a lot of it was definitely very set up. There wasn't like a lot of plot points, more of the plot points were in the second book, but I think it worked honestly in the series, and it kept me entertained, and it's really quick and easy to read, and I don't think you need to read the third book. You could read the first two without reading the third book, and I think you could read the third book without reading book 1 or 2. You'd maybe feel like you were missing a little bit of information, but not enough for it to properly impact your story because they're separate enough, and then books 1 and 2 are well enough explained in book 2 that I do think you could read it on its own. I would recommend reading the whole trilogy just because I don't think book 1 and book 2 are like bad. They're just not as good as the third one. So yeah, so this was a fun trilogy. I enjoyed it. I love anything piratey, and yeah, it was just a fun time really. It was more entertaining than anything, but sometimes you just need a fun time without it being anything deep. And then the last book that I read this month was The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. So I had previously read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder by Holly Jackson, and I do prefer that, but this was still very good. I gave this 4 stars. I don't read a lot of mysteries, so this was kind of like the Mirror Visitor series in that I didn't really see the plot points coming because it was very different than the usual books I read. And the plot twist at the end, oh my god, the plot twist at the end, I still haven't recovered. Still reeling. I really liked it. I did find our main character hard to deal with at times. Like, there were moments I disliked her, but her mum went missing when she was 2 years old, and then her dad got accused of the murder. Like, he wasn't guilty, but he got accused, and so like I get that would make you kind of unlikable, but there were moments where she'd say things and I was like, why? Don't open your mouth, you got nothing nice to say, you know? Aside from that, I really liked the story, and I felt like the character was likeable enough that I can move past the moments when I disliked her, or at least the story was interesting enough that I can move past it. But yeah, I did not see the ending of this one coming. I thought it was also a really interesting spin on your typical missing persons mystery, because her mum goes missing at 2 years old, and then 16 years later she just shows up, and that is obviously, she does give an explanation about where she'd been and all that, but I'm not going to say it because it's spoilers. But I thought that was really interesting because it's not just she goes missing, we have to find her, it's she goes missing, and then once everyone thinks she's dead years later, people haven't necessarily moved on, but it's been enough time that they're dead, you know, she shows back up again like that out of the blue. And so I really liked it. I think Holly Jackson does really good YA books with really good plot twists at the end. This was no exception, and I really liked the ending actually. I thought it was really sweet, and it was kind of creepy. I kind of liked how it was kind of creepy, and I feel like Holly Jackson does that well, where she has our main characters, like they're the main characters and they're the good guys, but there's a little something, you know, they're not 100% innocent, if you will. So I really liked it. I thought it was really good. It was 4 stars. It was a great way to end the month. So there you have it. Those were the 14 books. crazy. 14 books that I read this month. Honestly, the reading month was decent. It was a decent reading month. We kind of had in between 3 and 4 stars, so nothing really bad, but nothing amazing either. I am just actually really happy that this year I finished my 14 book reading challenge, because last year I did not. But yeah, I'm really happy that I read these books. It made a huge dent in my TBR. My TBR cart, as you can kind of see, the bottom shelf is basically empty now. However, my bookshelves are starting to not have enough room because I'm just reading so many of my physical TBR, which I'm very happy about. This is the point of this reading challenge, is to get through as much of my TBR as possible, and well, that was achieved. But yeah, it was a really good reading month. It was a full-on reading month. I had the typical February, mid-February flop kind of, where it just, because I've read so much and it's a lot and then there's so much more to read, my brain is kind of like, yeah, I don't want to read, this is too much. And so it is always hard to get past that, but I did get past it, read some good books which kind of brought me out of it, and so I end up the month on a high. End up the month with 4 stars, so that's great. But yeah, all in all, it was a really good reading month. I really enjoyed the books that I read. There wasn't a single book that I read that I disliked. There was some I liked more than others, but there was none that I disliked, so that's always great. But yeah, so we have come to the end of the video. I've spoken about the numerous books that I've read. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm very happy with my reading and the books I got through. I hope you have an absolutely wonderful week, and I will see you on Friday for the next video. Bye!